gonna be a little something more. I've got a plan in mind, a special thing in store. The light bulb inside my head says, get out and play, 'cause you never feel this way. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day. It's my lucky day, my lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold, a rabbit's foot or to be told. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day.
Hello, my friends. Happy Tuesday. I am so happy to be with you today. I am so happy to have my friend Julie Griffin with me today. And for those of you who don't know, I kind of got my start in live streaming on Julie's show, like forever long time ago. So I'm so excited to welcome you here, Julie. So excited for all that we're going to talk about. But before we really start our conversation, I want to give you a really great introduction. And I always think the best way to give someone a really great introduction is to have them write it themselves. So Julie is a doer who loves helping people. Throughout her life, she has been drawn to others and finds great joy in assisting them to achieve success. Her passion lies in helping others recognize who they are on the inside, their strengths, why they behave in certain ways, and why they thrive in certain areas but struggle in others. As a certified facilitator for the 6 types of working genius, Julie channels this passion through her training and coaching sessions. Participants leave with tools to increase productivity, communication, and morale in the workplace, at home, and beyond. She lives in northeastern Oklahoma with her husband and 2 kids. And when she's not working, she stays busy with the ranch, fishing, and kids' activities. So, Julie, I am so happy you're here.
Well, I am happy to be here too. Thank you so much for having me.
No, of course. And if you are tuning in with us, we are so happy that you are joining us. We've got Anne Marie who's here.
Hey.
Looking forward to learning more. We've got our friend Chris Hennessy, who I believe is the reason we both are live streaming.
Absolutely.
And we've got Dan Roth with us. We're so glad you're here. So if you're just tuning in, please do drop us a note in the chat. Let us know that you're here. We would absolutely love to know that you're listening to us today or listening with us. So, Julie, I want to start at the very beginning. Well, with whatever that means to you, like tell us your story. Where does your story really start? Where does it start?
Where does it start? It's a loaded question for 100% sure. I do think it's relevant to go back to before I moved to Oklahoma. So I live in Oklahoma now. I've been here for almost 20 years. That feels so weird to say. But I was born and raised on a farm and cattle ranch in central Washington state, so the Pacific Northwest. Youngest of 3 kids, awesome childhood. Moved to Oklahoma my junior year of college because I changed my major from animal science to agricultural communications. And Oklahoma State has the best ag-cog program in the nation. So go Pokes. So I moved here, and while working at the feed store, met a boy, and the rest is history for staying in Oklahoma. And I began my career at a career and technology education center in public relations and marketing, and then moved over to the business and industry services side about 5 years later, and was there for another almost 10-ish on my own for about a year before I landed where I am now, which is at another technology center, coordinating training and doing training. So I landed in this leadership development training space kind of by accident. A colleague of mine was working on coordinating some training, and he said, "Hey, would you want to partner with me on this?" And I was like, sure, I've never done this before, but yeah, let's do it. And that was really kind of my intro into this developing and facilitating training space, what I just have absolutely grown to love. And in the last year or so ish, have really been able to grow and embrace with this new training tool that I have in my belt that we're going to talk about more too.
Awesome. I love that. And I love how you kind of fell into it, and
Mhm.
use the word, by accident, because I always talk about how I fell into what I'm doing accidentally on purpose. So I always love a good accidental story. So, how did the working genius come into your radar?
So I am an assessment junkie. So strengths, Myers-Briggs, DISC, Enneagram, Gretchen Rubin's four tendencies. Like if there is an assessment out there that can help me figure out why I am the way I am, like I want to do it. And I am a part of a mastermind group of other trainers and facilitators. And when we get together about quarterly, and it was September of 22, one of the ladies in our group started talking about this new book she had read, an assessment called The Six Types of Working Genius. And of course, I was like, I have to know more. And so I read the book, started listening to the podcast, did the assessment. And at this point, I'd been on board at Meridian for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ish. And there was an opportunity to become a certified facilitator through the Six Types of Working Genius. And my supervisor at the time, he was like, hey, is this something you would like to do? Put another tool in your tool belt because I know you enjoy training. We don't have anybody on our staff who does this. There's really not many people in our area of the state who do. How about it? And I was like, heck yeah. Like, so I became a certified facilitator in April of 23. And so almost a year ago. And so ever since then, I've been just doing reps, which I would call it, with delivering training, visiting with people, one-on-one coaching sessions, etc. So it came to me again, kind of by accident, but absolutely on purpose.
I totally love that. And I want to just pull this up. Rebecca saying that you're a rock star and so passionate about using your working genius, which I can't wait to talk about. Also want to say hi to Amber, who's tuning in, watching on her
Oh
phone,
no.
commenting in the laptop. Well, I'm glad you're here in two
Yes.
places, Amber.
Yes,
So
thank you for
glad you're
your
here.
efforts. And I want to point out Rebecca, she's my boss. Like I work with her every day. So I'm so glad that she is watching over on my Facebook page. So that is super cool. I
Awesome.
love Restream and how it can just stream to all the places.
Yeah, I love that too. I stream to Facebook just so my mom can forget to watch me every week.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
because I will
love it.
call her when I'm done and say, "I just finished my live stream," and she'll say, "Oh, was that tonight? You're supposed to remind me." Um, it's
Just
just our thing that
every
we
night,
do.
Ma. Just every night. Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny.
All right, so tell us about the working genius. So I have taken it, but all of the assessments I've ever done,
Mhm.
because I will also call myself an assessment junkie. This
Yes.
is the one I have paid the least amount of attention
Mhm.
to, and don't quite get what to do
Okay.
with my results. So let's start at the very beginning of what working genius is, what it means, how we find out what our type is.
Okay. Well, the great thing about Working Genius is it's very, very simple. There's only six. So if you are an assessment junkie, that's a pretty small number compared to a lot of them, especially strengths is like 34, which I love strengths also, and it has its own place. So what I like to tell people is every single one of those assessments looks at a different layer of who we are. If you're familiar with the movie Shrek, ogres have layers. So do people. We've all got those onions of layers that we can peel back and look at a different layer of who we are. What sets Working Genius apart is it's 20% personality and like 80% productivity. So it's really about getting work done and identifying those types of tasks and activities that bring us energy, joy, and fulfillment. And so it's really that productivity piece that also helps us get work done in a more efficient and joyous way. Because when we enjoy what we do, obviously we're going to have a better attitude, we're going to be more productive, etc. And what I love about how this assessment came to be, which I should mention, it was developed by the Table Group and Patrick Lencioni, which Table Group has been a leader in organizational health and development for 20 plus years. And Pat had a particularly rough day at work, and one of his coworkers came in and was like, "Why are you the way you are?" And he was like, "I don't know. Let's figure it out." And so they had a conversation and went through, patterns and activities and his, ensuing attitudes afterwards. And that's what this model was born out of. So there's 6 types of working genius. Everybody has 2 geniuses, 2 competencies, and 2 frustrations. And obviously, as you can guess, our geniuses are those types of activities that bring us energy, joy, and fulfillment. Our competencies are kind of like meh. And then our frustrations are the things that suck the ever living life out of us. And so what they determined is he'd been doing a lot of competency and or frustration work, which was draining his battery and not leaving room for genius work, which would fulfill him, hence, the grumpier attitude that he was having.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because as you were talking, I'm thinking about just kind of a regular day at the office. And the days I come home and I feel great about what I've done
Mm-hmm.
are the days when I've really been doing those tasks and working on the projects that just light me up.
Mm-hmm.
And the days I come home and I'm like, oh, this is like 100 million hours long, right?
Yes.
It's because I was doing something that just needs to get
Yeah.
done,
Mm-hmm.
but just doesn't feel good as I'm doing it.
Yes. And I think even in just that little bitty thing that you said, looking at your results makes 100% sense. So I want to quickly go through the 6 types. And if you're watching and you haven't heard of the 6 types of working genius, I want you to listen to them and think and try and peg yourself. Because there will probably be at least one that you go, oh, that's totally me. And one that you're like, oh, that is so not me. And I would call those your bookends. And then the ones in the middle might be kind of muddy, might be clearer, but definitely your bookends will probably be very obvious.
Awesome. And if you are listening and know what your type is, drop them in
Yes.
the chat because I
Yes.
know I'm super curious. I know Julie obviously is super interested. You can see it how your face lit up. I love that. And
Yes.
do want to also say hello to Lisa Marie
Yes.
and to Sarah, who is up at 5 a.m.
Oh
listening
my
to us.
gosh.
Thank you. I don't think I would get up at 5 a.m. to listen to me. So you must be here for Julie. So thank you for being here with us, Sarah.
Yes,
So
thank you.
the types of working genius.
Yes, so there are 6. It does spell widget. So it's wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. So starting at the beginning, wonder, people with a genius of wonder are really big picture thinkers. They live at that like 30,000 foot level. They love to ponder and ask questions. They can just sit and think about things. I cannot relate to wanderers because that is one of my frustrations. But like my dad is a wanderer and he can sit in the tractor for hours just thinking about dirt and fertilizer and cows and the sky and whatever else it is. So they're very contemplative people, really deep thinkers. They probably ask a lot of questions, but it's really from a place of wonder and understanding and just contemplation versus like questioning things. People with a genius of invention, which is the next one, which happens to be your number 1 genius and my number 2. People with a genius of invention love to create things. People with the genius of invention love like a blank slate that just says, here, give me something related to this. And just with that freedom to just come out of the woodwork and just create, which to me explains why you love journaling so much, because every day you have a blank page and you get to just fill it up with whatever your heart desires.
Yep.
I think that makes 100% sense for you. The inventors love to come up with possible solutions to those questions that the wonderer is asking. So the next genius or the next phase of work is discernment. People with a genius of discernment have really good gut feel and intuition. It's less about data and experience and more about just listening to your knower. You've probably had situations where the data is telling you one thing, but your gut is telling you another. And that is really your discernment at work. People with a genius of discernment are probably those types of people that others naturally gravitate towards when they need help solving a problem. I have a discerner on my team at work that if I'm writing a strongly worded email, I'll be like, hey, Joe, can you come look at this for me and make sure I don't sound like a total bee? So the types of people that just have that really good judgment. Actually had a really great example today at work where some people in our organization were wording something that was ended up being like policy or legal document. And the one gal, she was like, you know what? I don't think this is right. I can't tell you why, but I don't think it's right. And so they pumped the brakes on it and did a little more research, and turns out her gut was right. Like they were not able to use that wording for that particular document. So just that intuition really is related back to people's discernment. The next genius or phase of work is galvanizing. People with a genius of galvanizing have the ability to rally people, to break down barriers, to make sure everybody's on the same page and moving in the same direction. What I love about galvanizers, because it's my very, very lowest genius, is their ability to move people out of their comfort zone to go do something. I have a friend of mine who I was visiting with last summer, and she mentioned that she was talking with her staff. She works at another technology center here in Oklahoma. She was visiting with her staff at like their back to school in service, about 150 people. And she goes, how many of you have I talked into doing something you didn't want to do? And everybody in the room raised their hands. And I was like, oh my gosh, I bet you are a galvanizer. And sure enough, she is number one, a galvanizer. So they're really high energy people. They love to get people rallied and excited and moving. And they're super, super important to the process of work. The next genius is the genius of enablement, which is my number one and your number two. So people with a genius of enablement, we love to help people, but it's not just about helping. We have the unique ability to anticipate what's needed and then come alongside and provide assistance in the way that it's needed and desired. So I always talk about, this is an example I give in all my trainings, I talk about folding towels. So everybody says there's a right way to fold towels, correct? Yes, everybody says there's a right way to fold towels. So somebody with the genius of enablement, if they're coming to help you fold towels, would be like, number one, either watch you and then copy it, or number two, straight out ask you, how would you like me to fold these towels? And then do so accordingly. Somebody without the genius of enablement might come along, dump them on the bed, fold them all willy-nilly, and then walk away thinking that they had helped. In reality, they just gave you a neatly stacked pile of towels that needs to be refolded.
I'm laughing because when you asked if there's a right way, and I was like, yeah, well, it depends on the size of your closet and how deep your shelves are and how many you're trying to stick in, how many rows you want to get in there. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So it's funny. Everybody's like, oh yeah, and just like you said, depending on your cabinet, because like the way I grew up folding towels is not the way I can fold towels now for my towel storage place. And I die a little on the inside every single time. So I'm like, that's not how I learned to fold towels.
Okay, wait. So I have to know, how did you learn to fold towels?
Okay, so I learned to fold towels like long way. So like hamburger.
Yep.
And then in half again. And then in thirds.
Okay. That's how I fold my towels.
Okay. Yeah.
And how do you fold them now?
So now because I roll them because that's how they fit best. So I'll do hot dog and then like a 3/4 fold and then I roll it.
So interesting. Okay, you've totally blown my mind here. It never occurred to me that A, first of all, we'd be talking about towels, but B, that I would roll mine. Oh, now my brain is totally turning. So that is enablement. Yes?
Yes, that is enablement, and the unique ability to anticipate needs and come alongside and provide help in the way that it's wanted and needed. The last genius and the last phase of work is tenacity. So people with a genius of tenacity love to get things done, get things crossed off their list, across the finish line, I's dotted, T's crossed, details down to the quality, to the deadline, to the budget, and they will bust through any barriers or obstacles in order to get there. So they're the ones that are like, we got to get this done. I don't know if we're going to hit our deadline. We need to raise our standards here, or, oh, just let me do it. Which happens to be like a flagstone of the people with tenacity. And whenever I mention that, there's always somebody in the room that goes, because they do that.
So as I'm listening to you talk about that, my first thought is like, I love starting things so
Mm,
much.
yeah.
And then I reach a point in the project where I'm
Mhm.
like, I just want to be done already.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's super hard to like get across the finish
Mhm.
line. But if there's something to be done and I want it done a certain way, then
Mhm.
I just want to do it myself, even though that
Mhm.
is like the bottom of my,
Yeah.
of my geniuses. What is it? My frustration
Yep.
causers?
It's your lowest frustration. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we, because you said there will be ones that we definitely can
Mhm.
recognize in either direction. But
Mhm.
what for like, well, that's kind of like me sometimes.
Mhm.
How do you know what your geniuses really are?
I'd say, well, number one, like if you want to take the assessment, that's probably an easy way to start. But also, you can just look at like your patterns and your experiences and where you get that energy and where you get drained and probably peg them pretty accurately. And like I tell people, it's a ranking, not a rating, and it's not like set in stone. So if the assessment says one thing and you're like, I'm not so sure that's me, like you have the ability to shuffle it. I actually shuffled mine because I originally came up as an ETID. Tenacity, I really struggle with. I can do it, but it doesn't, if I can avoid it, I will. I think part of that has to do with an ADHD diagnosis and just struggling to finish things. But also, like, I would much rather create something else or tweak something and then keep tweaking it and tweaking it instead of just actually finishing it. So, if I mean, like, you can take the assessment, you can figure it out on your own. It's really what I say is one of the most important pieces of this is the self-awareness that it gives you, because to really kind of look inside and reflect on, oh, these are the types of activities that I really enjoy and am naturally good at, and these are the types of activities that I'm not, and trying to either structure your work or your day so that you can spend more time in those geniuses and then delegate or offload or surround yourself with people who can compensate for those areas of frustration. So I'd say there's not really a hard and fast rule for determining what you are. It's more or less that reflection piece and that self-awareness of knowing what makes you tick and what doesn't.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So we do the assessment, we
Mhm.
get our results, and then what do we do with them? Because I think that's the place where
Mhm.
I was like, now what? Like
Mhm.
I don't quite get it. I mean, I get it, but
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was actually a question that was in the session I had today was like, how long does it take for this to sink in? And my response was it's different for everybody. I think if you are intentional about wanting to make it sink in, you just start using the language of working genius in your everyday. And
Hmm.
so one example of that is within the working genius model from wonder to tenacity. You can think of it like stair steps or a mountain, like elevation. So like I said, wonder lives at 30,000 feet. Tenacity is like 5,000 feet to the ground. So, one of the great examples and usages of this model is defining the type of meeting or conversation that you're having. So, if you're having, a brainstorming meeting where you are thinking big picture, forward thinking, no limits, that would be a wonder invention, possibly a little bit of discernment meeting. So, going into that, you can say, all right, this is a wonder invention meeting. We want big ideas, no limits. So, if you are somebody like me who tends to pull conversations to enablement, I can recognize this isn't where I'm naturally good at. But because every job is a six letter job, I need to recognize I need to live in this space right now and dig up my wonder and my invention to be able to participate. Because if you don't do that, you can be having this big, lofty conversation about all these forward thinking ideas. And then somebody who lives in either enablement or tenacity comes along and says, well, who's going to own that? Or how are we going to afford that? Or all these little detail things that don't live in that conversation. And when you do that, it really causes turbulence. Like you feel yourself being sucked from high altitude down to the ground. Like, what just happened? And it happens for the reverse too. If you're in like an ET meeting where you've got like a project launching tomorrow and you're making sure this person's going to man this station and check people in and blah, blah, blah. And somebody comes in and goes, what if we did this? It's like, whoop, pulls that conversation up. And it's like, what just happened? Like, put your invention away. And so that's one of the easiest ways to start implementing working genius language, is just understanding that process of work beginning to end, from wonder to tenacity, and recognizing which phase of work you're in and which genius is appropriate and needed at that time.
I love that so much, because as you were talking about the 30,000-foot view, I was thinking about my own enablement, and I'm like, yeah, I totally want to know what the goal is so that I can help, because if I don't know that the goal is to stay up here, then I can't be super helpful. Oh, I love it. So I see how that could be super helpful, using that language around other people who also have this language. But how do you use it in a setting where other people aren't familiar with it?
So I think you can still use the language, just maybe with some more explanation or definition around it. So, for example, this is an example and story that I tell in all of my sessions. There was a big keynote speaker, and he was planning his next event. And he said, what if we brought a tiger on stage? And somebody in the room said, he wants to bring a tiger on stage. And the meeting continued and finished. And a couple weeks later, they came back and she raised her hand and she goes, I've done the research, and this is the companies that we can rent a tiger from, and this is how much it's going to cost, and this is the insurance that we have to have in place. And he was like, I didn't actually need you to do that. So had they had this language or this concept in place, two things could have happened. He could have said, now I'm just brainstorming big ideas out here. I don't need you to do anything, or I'm just inventing. Or she could have said, are you just brainstorming? Are you inventing? Or do you need me to do something? I need to enable you to do this? Because I would guess that person would probably be an ET. So just that language of throwing ideas out there or putting something on your to-do list can really help differentiate and give some clarity to the conversation. So even if you don't have the working genius language, you can still express it in a way that everybody understands what you mean.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I wish I knew who that person was, because I want to be her friend. Like, anybody who would take a kooky idea I throw out and like figure out how to make it happen. Like,
Yeah.
I totally need to know her.
Well,
I love that.
I'm glad you mentioned a kooky idea, because I think I failed to mention this. There is a really important relationship between inventors and discerners. So in the process, I and D are right next to each other. And there's this thing called the ID loop, invention discernment loop. So when the inventor comes up with an idea, it might be a crazy harebrained idea, like bringing a tiger on stage. That's why it's so important to give intentional time and consideration to the next phase, which is discernment, to allow them to be like, you know what, we need to think about this more. Or, oh my gosh, you are crazy, we're not bringing a tiger on stage. Or, I think you're onto something, tell me more. And so after the inventor comes up with an idea, that discerner needs time to come in and discern the idea and maybe send it back to the inventor for some refinement. So there's this, it'll go inventor, discerner, until this idea is kind of refined and vetted before it moves forward in the process.
And I'm imagining that it would be really interesting if both the inventor and discerner were the same person, because that
Yes.
happens, right?
Yes, it does happen. And actually, Pat Lencioni, the creator of this, is an inventor discerner. So if you have somebody in your world who is an inventor discerner, a lot of times the ideas they put forth, they've already discerned quite a bit. And so they're probably pretty sound. The other thing you have to be cautious of, it's a lot harder to discern your own ideas. And so if you are an inventor discerner, it's important to have other discerners around you to discern your discernment, to verify, yes, this is sound, I thought through things, or see things that you didn't, because a lot of times we can be blind to our own faults.
And do you find that people who are inventor discerners um, just get stuck in thinking mode all the time? Like, do those people move forward and do, or is it just like thinking?
It's a good question. I don't work real closely with any IDs. I know a couple, but I don't work real closely with them. And the ones that I know, their role lives in that area. And so the thinking and discerning really fits the role that they have, and the actual function of their role isn't that getting things done phase of work, which is great because they might struggle to get things done. They might struggle to move into that ET phase, that implementation phase, because it doesn't come naturally to them.
So, what I'm hearing is what you said before about using our strengths,
Mhm.
using those geniuses to do the kinds of work. If my genius is here, then I
Mhm.
want to work in a job that allows me to do those things. Okay, this is I know you said it at the very beginning, but you can tell I'm just like, "Aha, now I get it."
Yeah, no, it's fine. It sometimes it can take a minute for it to click and really resonate. The other thing is, oh, I totally just lost my train of thought. Oh, not you're not going to get to live 100% in your geniuses, because every job is a six-letter job. We are adults. We're going to have to do work outside of our geniuses, and when we do that, we just need to put on our big girl panties and do the job. One of the people on the table group team that's a kind of a leader in this working genius space, tenacity is one of his frustrations. And so when he has to do tenacity work, he will physically take his laptop to a conference room and tell his team, I got to go do some tenacity work. I'll be back in a little bit. So he changes his environment for that period of time when he has to do that work that is outside of his genius. And I think that, number one, triggers our brains to know that we're doing a different type of work. And it also tells us this is temporary. I don't have to live here. And so we're able to kind of rustle up our muster to do the thing that doesn't come naturally and we don't really enjoy for that period of time.
No, and I love that because I'm thinking of times when I have to do certain kinds of work. I'm like,
Mhm.
what is the soundtrack I can put in my
Yeah.
ears to make this easy,
Yeah.
or easier? So I absolutely love that. So I want to ask you a question that you
Okay.
probably hear often in your trainings, like, which are the best geniuses to have? Right? Like, is there one that's better than another? Which one should I like? Be disappointed I don't have.
Uh, there's not an answer. Like, there's not one genius that's better than the other. I think there are some geniuses that are more observable than others. People with a genius of invention, like you, have one of the most observable geniuses because you put things out into the world and somebody's like, oh my gosh, that's a genius idea. Duh. So it happens. Also, people with tenacity, like they're the ones that are getting things done and checked off and pushed through. That's very observable. The others are more internal. Enablement is kind of observable because you're actually coming alongside and helping somebody to do something. But when it comes to ranking one better than the other, like there's not. It's really just that self-awareness piece of understanding what your geniuses are and what you bring to the table and leaning into those and not trying to get better at your frustrations, not trying to get better at the things that don't bring you energy, joy, and fulfillment, because that's just crazy. I mean, because we can do the things that we don't enjoy, but we don't have to live there, nor should we try.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So, I totally see how this could be super helpful in a team
Mhm.
environment where everybody knows their genius. We talk about it, you figure it out, map it out, whatever. What does it look like maybe on a personal
Mhm.
basis? Can you talk about what we could see there?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I talk about in my trainings is it's not just at work, 8 to 5 work. Anything that has to be accomplished can be considered work. That could be grocery shopping or dinner or planning a vacation or whatever it is that is 100% related to your personal life. The other thing is you know, it helps to know what your partner or spouse is, because if you have complementary geniuses, that is helpful to know. If you guys double up and have the same frustrations, then you might have some struggles because neither one of you is going to want to do that particular thing over there. So it is important to understand what you are personally and those around you personally. And also, the same concept applies with the widget framework to getting anything done, like planning the vacation. Where do we want to go this year? What kind of memories do we want to make? Those are the wonder questions that you have to start with. And it's like, oh, well, we went skiing, we want to do warm weather this year. All right, well, what are some warm weather options? And just walking through that process and understanding, oh, well, this place will be more expensive this time of year. Maybe we can go here and have a similar experience, but for less money. That's your discernment coming in. And then, galvanizing, getting your family, getting everybody buy-in, like getting everybody excited about going on this particular trip. And then, making sure that, the tickets are getting booked, the bags are getting packed, the groceries are getting bought, whatever it is getting done. And then obviously getting out the door and going on your trip. So the same process applies to even those personal tasks.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. So, is there a particular age at which we can see our geniuses like showing up? Because it seems to me like little kids, you might not
Mhm.
know it yet. But by the time they're teenagers, like, is
Mhm.
there like an age threshold?
I don't think it's who we are made, like how we are made and who we are on the inside. So our geniuses, like for me, thinking way back, I can see my enablement genius showing up when I was a little bitty kid.
Mm,
And even in my kids, like I would be surprised if if they don't have enablement as a genius, just because they have such a heart for helping others. The assessment is designed for adults, but they say as soon as somebody can understand the questions, they can take the assessment. And so there's been people, I'm in a working genius facilitators small group, and they've had their 16-year-old kids take the assessment, and it's been really eye-opening for them as well, because it's like that aha moment. Oh, this is why they are the way they are. So I think as far as assessment goes, as soon as they can understand the questions, they could take it. But if you're in tune with the nuances of working genius and paying attention, there's probably things that you can pick out and go, oh, I bet that is this genius.
okay, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So, this might be a little far out there,
Okay.
and you cannot answer if you don't want to answer. I know you said at the beginning you're an assessment junkie, so you've done
Mhm.
them all. Let's take like Clifton strengths.
Okay.
Like, do you see your Clifton strengths aligning with your
Mhm.
working genius types?
Yes. So I don't necessarily want to use the word align, because that to me that seems too rigid, and with there being only 6 working geniuses and 34 strengths, there's a lot of variability in there. However, my enablement and invention genius pairing absolutely plays into my restorative genius, because it's all about like helping create something new. And when I had that revelation, I was, because I never really understood what the restorative genius meant. And when I read that, I was like, well, holy cow, that's been my whole life, because I'm kind of a fixer. Like I will come into a situation like, all right, this is the good thread. Let's build on that. And that's actually like a back in the back of my mind, a passion project that I want to pursue is looking at how our strengths and our working geniuses overlay, because I the more I do this, the more I believe there is something there. Like it is another layer of who we are, but I would love to be able to dig a little bit deeper and figure out why, or what that correlation is, or how those things play off each other. And I can't help but think, like even with like the Enneagram, I'm an enablement genius. I'm also an Enneagram 2.
Also, in
So,
a two.
okay, so I think, that type of person will probably show up differently than an uh, enablement genius Enneagram 7. And I'm not well versed in Enneagram whatsoever, except for what I am. But just knowing what I know of the assessment, we're vastly different people. So how does that other layer affect how we show up?
So I love that. I have been saying to my husband for years, like, I wish there was a way to map
Yeah.
out all of my
Uh-huh.
assessments, and see where everything interplays.
Mhm.
So I actually called my brother-in-law, who's super smart statistics guy, like chief data guy at Harvard. And he was like, okay, so tell me about this project. And I explained it. And he was like, well, if you could turn it into numbers,
Mhm.
then I could come up with all kinds of things you could do. And I'm thinking like, how would I turn all
Yeah.
these assessments into numbers?
Yeah.
Like my brain doesn't like working in numbers. It likes to
Mhm.
work in words and concepts. So
Yeah.
as he's explaining this to me, I'm over here with Sharpies and tracing paper, like writing things and literally laying them over.
Yeah.
And for me, it was discovering human design. As I
Mm.
was reading through it, I was like, oh, here's my strengths and here's my
Uh-huh.
enneagram, and now I'm going to look back through everything and like really see my working genius in there
Mhm.
too. So so like as you dig into this, like
Mhm.
let's totally have lots of conversations because I think
Absolutely.
it's fascinating.
Yes, I love it, and I have so a friend of mine is a, strengths coach, and we're very close, we do a lot of work together, and so I have this, like, dream for a future class where, like, we combine and do, like, a combined strengths working genius session that's really, like, a deeper dive for people who really wanna dig into who they are and why they show up the way they do, which I think could be really super valuable, but that's, down the road a little ways.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing when you do it. I totally want to be like in on it. All right, so what have I not asked about the working genius? Like, what questions do you normally get
Um
in your
I think you
trainings?
asked a lot of good ones. There is one thing that I haven't covered, and I mentioned it in my post today, and it's usually one of the things that people will mark on the evaluations, like, "Oh, this part was really valuable," and it's this concept of craves and crushes. So every genius has something that they crave more of and something that, like, just crushes them. So, for example, people with the genius of enablement, like us, we crave appreciation. Like knowing that what we did was noticed and it mattered and it made a difference, and that someone thought enough to tell us, whether that's, the languages of appreciation correlate with the love languages. So, whether that's words or time or gifts or whatever it is, I'm very much a words person. So, if you send me a thank you note saying you appreciate what I did, like I will be like, how can I do this again? Like, ah. Um, and so that's just one example. On the flip side, what crushes people with enablement is being overlooked or forgotten and feeling like what we did really didn't matter. Like, it's just like, then why do I try? And so every single genius has a crave and a crush. Trying to think of another example. Tenacity craves clarity. They want to know what success looks like. What does done look like? What's the deadline? They're crushed by ambiguity, where somebody just says, here's something to do. Whenever's fine. Whatever you think is fine. Just whenever. They'll be like, no, like, give me a deadline. And another one that I love is galvanizing. So galvanizing is one of my is my very lowest genius. But galvanizers, they crave reaction. So when they are, trying to galvanize their group and get people rallied, they want to know that they've been heard and people acknowledge it and like, yes, I will do this. Head nodding, whatever it is. They're crushed by apathy. So somebody that just like, doesn't respond at all. And the reason I bring up galvanizing, even though it's one of my frustrations, is because every job is a 6-letter job. We have to do work outside of our geniuses. When you're working outside of your geniuses, either a competency or a frustration, those craves and crushes are amplified because we're having to work so much harder to do the thing. When you don't get that crave piece, it crushes you even further because you're already trying so hard and then you don't get that feedback. And it's just like, just like multiplied.
Yeah, no, that is super, super helpful. So, if we want to learn more about the working
Mhm.
genius, where where do we go?
So the workinggenius.com or workinggenius.com, I think. Yeah, it's just workinggenius.com. Is a great website. It has lots of resources there. You can take the assessment there. The assessment is $25, so it's really, really affordable. Have your results instantly. And the report that you get is pretty robust. It talks about your geniuses, what it means, and then your competencies and frustrations like in detail. Oh, JC Everett, she's here. She came to my LinkedIn classes at Meridian. Sorry, I totally scrolled out on you.
Oh, you know what? I missed out. I didn't scroll.
Oh, um,
So much here. Sorry for
oh, that's
missing
fine.
these
No, that's
great,
fine. We've
these
been
great
talking. It just
comments.
happened to pop up on my screen over here. So the Working Genius website, the Working Genius podcast is phenomenal. The book is great. The podcast is phenomenal. They're really short and they really dive into specific nuances of the genius. And then, of course, I always say I would love to be your resource. If I can answer questions or provide training for you, like I would love to talk about it because I think you've seen, like, I'm very passionate about this and I love to talk about it. I love helping people have those light bulb moments when they're like, oh, that makes sense. Or, oh, I can see how that applies. Or, oh, that's why they are the way they are. So the website, the podcast, and me.
Awesome. Julie, thank you so much for
Of
being
course.
here. Thank you for helping me to finally understand this assessment and how it shows up. I can't wait to dig in more and really see where it's showing up and what is showing up where. My friends, thank you so much for joining us. It has been so delightful having you with us for our conversation. And we'll see you next time.
Yes.
All right. Bye, everybody.